Well, my three kids headed back to school this week, which was kind of a bizarre thing. We got them all masked up, suited up, ready to go. But as we got them ready to go attempt to be back in a classroom, it struck Donna and I, our children for the last 6 months, half a year, have really just been around us, which has been pretty sweet because it's been a lot of time. We've taken walks every day and sat on the couch and read an enormous amount of books. They've had so much time with us as their parents to be loved by us, cared by us, led by us, and then for us to teach them how to treat each other as siblings. But now, as we were preparing to send them out into the world, it struck us, y'all haven't been out in society. Like, do you even know how to talk to strangers anymore? Like, have you become strange? We realized we kind of had to reboot them. Here's how the Stuarts operate in society because we're not sure you know anymore. I remember when Donna was pregnant with our firstborn, Hannah, a movie came out called Hannah, and we thought, let's watch it. And the first half of the movie, it was this dad with his daughter, and he took her far away from society to protect her from the craziness, and he basically just taught her how to hunt and fish and gave her ninja skills. And I remember looking at Donna, and I'm like, I like where this is going. I'm kind of vibing with this philosophically. But as the movie progressed, inevitably they had to enter back into society, and their dad's sheltering of her actually left her unequipped to know how to navigate the relational networks she was inevitably going to face. And you realize, oh, okay, I see. There was a flaw in this logic. We have to acclimate the children on how to move out into the culture. And I say that because that's what's happening in 1 Peter. I mean, 1 Peter's doing what every organization does. Every organization has a statement of vision and of values. This is who we are, and this is how we act in the world. Every family, every organization does that. And Peter's doing that, saying, hey, as the people of Jesus who have allegiance to him, this is who we are because of our intimacy with him. And so this is how we act in the world. Intimacy with the Almighty has changed the way we move into society. That's what Peter says. And so at the beginning of the book, he's talking about this relationship with our dad, with our family, and now we're at the pivot point in the book, which is really where we're going to plant in this series. We're entitling Free People. It's the pivot where he says, now, as the people of God, the family of God, here's how we as people enter society. And he gives you this great statement. We live as free people, but not using our freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. We honor everyone. We love the brotherhood. We fear God, and we honor the emperor. It's like he walks his children out into the culture and makes us do quarter turns and says, it's the people of Jesus. Here's how you handle those who believe differently than you. Here's how you handle the people who believe the same as you. Here's how you treat the God who made it all. And then here's how you handle the government under which you will be subject. And we'll cover that one in 3 weeks. It will be very exciting. But we're going to hit the first one of those today. We honor everybody, but we can't just start there because the Bible never does. We got to get a running start at it because the Bible, Peter, and all of Scripture argues that you have to get identity right first because your identity determines your activity. Who you are determines what you do. And so Peter, for a chapter and a bit, is telling us this is who you are, and your identity has implications for how you live in the world. I remember I had a friend that went on a mission trip years ago, and he realized quickly, I'm the youngest person on this mission trip by far. And so he just kind of felt a bit of that insecurity. I don't want to speak up, but he was witty and smart. So he just kind of slid naturally into, well, I'll be the jokester, just giving a little funny commentary to give a laugh at whatever happens. Until finally, this older guy in the group grabbed him and pulled him aside and said, hey man, you're the pastor. Because he had just become pastor of their church. And he said, so you're our leader. Act like it. Lead us. And he said it was the first moment that it hit him. Oh yeah, I took on a new identity. And that has implications for how I act in society. And that identity is more fundamental. I am their pastor, and so I need to act like it. But it's true of all of us. If I'm going to tell you to do this, do this, do this, we got to start with who you are, because I promise you, what you think about when you look in the mirror determines how you feel when you walk into a room. And it'll determine how you perceive what people say about you and what you choose to say and what you choose to do. I'll give you a horrible example. I read several interviews recently of women who were in the porn industry. The common denominator of all of them is that they were abused as little girls. And though none of them heard someone say it directly to them, that experience lodged into their mind some truths about them, that you are unworthy to be loved. No one cares about what you think or how you feel. But you are valuable to the degree that you're sexual. And you're dirty, and so no one will want you as a person. So therefore, this is your lot in life. And these women subjected themselves to abuse over and over and over again. Why? Because they believed that identity fundamentally. This is who I am, so this is what I deserve or what's best for me. And so if you came to them and said, hey, you just need to stop doing those movies, that's not enough. It was a lie lodged in their heart that launched that lifestyle. It has to be supplanted with truth. And so the reality is, for us, the same is true. Before Peter says you need to do this, he says, let me tell you who you are. Your relationship with God has reoriented you to the rest of the world. You are not what they said. You are what he says. So the question is, who are you? And we're going to cover 3 points here, but the first one is who you are. And so I want to challenge you to do this. If you're taking notes, and I hope you are, grab a piece of paper and write at the top of it your full given name and any relevant nicknames. And I'm going to tell you as point 1, 5 things that are true of us as people who believe in Jesus. What's true of us? So point 1 is we are God's people. We are God's people. We belong to the Lord. And Peter says a lot about that. We'll just jump at 5 really quick in this first point. And because these things are going to inform not just our identity, but our activity. He says we are God's people. And as such, we are chosen. That's what he said in verse 9. You're a chosen race. Or in verse 1, when he was introducing himself to them, he said, I'm Peter, and you are the elect exiles. Elect, chosen, same idea, that God selected you. According to the foreknowledge of the Father, it says, that he wanted you. It was intentional. And it's closely tied to the next word. You are chosen, and you are holy. He said, you're a chosen race, a holy nation. That word holy means set apart, pulled out, pulled away from there, and brought close to here. He does it again in the intro. He says that you are elect exiles according to the foreknowledge of God the Father. He chose you on purpose. And to the sanctification of the Holy Spirit. Sanctification, holy, same word. You are set apart, away from them and unto me. Now, you can get into big theological, philosophical arguments about those 2 words. We could spend the rest of our time doing that. I'm not going to. They are meant to be a comfort to you. There's something precious about knowing someone wanted you. You're chosen and set apart for me. We're reading Harry Potter with the kids, and little Ginny Weasley. Cover your ears, kids, because we haven't gotten to this part yet. She's like the 8th child in the Weasley family, a poor wizarding family. But the great Harry Potter wanted her and chose her to be holy unto him as his wife. It's nice to be chosen. Donna could have been with a lot of other guys. She chose me and set her affections on me. And I am my beloved's, and she is mine. And that's a comforting thought. So you're chosen, and you're holy, set apart for him. And as such, you're beloved. Notice in the text, verse 9 again, you're a chosen race, a holy nation, a people of his own possession. He says, I want you for me. He says, once you weren't a people, but now you're God's people. You're my people. Once you had not received mercy, compassion, love, and care. He says, but now you have. My compassion came towards you. And I love it in verse 11. He calls them beloved. And I love that because it's not just saying the verb like you're loved. He takes the word love and he makes it the noun. He makes them their name. You're the loved ones. Beloved is your name. Right next to your name, the word beloved. Do you believe it? For a lot of people, that's the hardest one to believe. It's easier, statistically, if you came from a loving 2-parent home to believe you're the beloved. It's hard for a lot of other people to buy that. One of the last conversations I was blessed to have with Ravi Zacharias was he told the story to me of how as he journeyed through the Middle East, more and more, he was beginning to tell the story in that context that Jesus told about the prodigal son. And he said they really understood the first part of that story, the gravity of it, the insult of a son saying to a father, give me my inheritance ahead of time because I don't want to be with you anymore. I just want the money and I'm going to go spend it on whatever I want. They saw the shock and the offense, the dishonor to a family for a son to say something like that. He said, you felt the anger off the crowd. But as the son ran away and lived in riotous living and realized he made a huge mistake, as Jesus unfolds the story, the son wonders, I wonder if my father will take me back in his house. And Ravi said, as he told the story of the son making his journey back, he said, you could feel the tension in the room. He said, but when I began to tell them, when the father saw that son, for many of these men in their culture, the father would absolutely reject that son, possibly take the son's life. He said, but as I began to explain to them that the dad, when he saw his son still a long way off, he ran for him and embraced him and kissed him, present active, continuously kissed him and dressed him and robed him and celebrated him. He said the room was filled with a pregnant silence of people. He said you could feel the longing. Could that possibly be true? That a dad could love a wayward child like that? And that's what Jesus was trying to communicate. That's what your Father God is like. When you're a long way off, he ran for you. He embraces you. He chose you. He set you apart. And he loves you. You're the beloved. All through this passage, he keeps calling himself Dad. I'm a father, your children. He talks like that. I love the way he intros them. He says, from the foreknowledge of God the Father through the sanctification of the Spirit to the obedience of Jesus Christ. He picks the triune Godhead, Father, Son, and Spirit, wants to wrap you up in the love of God, surrounded by the love of the Holy Trinity. My children love to crawl up into the bed to be snuggled between mom and dad. They like the safety of it. And Peter's telling these people who they are. You are snuggled in to the love of the triune Godhead. You are chosen, you are holy, you are loved. You're part of a family. You're part of a family, your children. And notice all these words are plurals. A chosen race, a holy nation, a people for his own possession. Once you're not a people, now you're God's people. He goes on to say, people who know Jesus are from all different ethnicities, and your ethnicities and cultures and different parties that you're affiliated with. You don't lose those identities, but now they're secondary to this one great identity. God took all of us and just adopted a big, random, eclectic community of kids. You're part of a family, and you're part of a family that are heirs. That according to his great mercy, he's caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. That's how we got it, not from anything we've done, but because of what he did. To an inheritance that's imperishable, undefiled, unfaded, kept in heaven for you, who by God's power are guarded through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time, and in this you rejoice. He said, you have an inheritance in heaven. Your future is secure. No matter what happens in life, you know all our stories end in victory. You are a royal priesthood. You have royal blood in your veins. The kingdom is coming to you. And that's a comforting thought. And we could go through all these. They all have different implications. You see in the text, as children who are holy and chosen and loved, we're meant to obey. Chosen according to the foreknowledge of God to the obedience of Jesus Christ. He says earlier in the passage, as obedient children, don't be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who's called you is holy, you be holy. My kids were chosen by Donna and I. We chose to have them. They didn't make that choice, we did. And they were set apart to us. They're our kids, and they're beloved by us. We loved them before they had done anything wrong or right. They are beloved children, and as such, we want them to obey. And that is not tyranny. It's for their good. My son the other day was trying to eat grass out in the yard because that's what he saw a deer do. It is not tyranny for me to feed him the food that will help him survive. He does not know what is best for him. I do. So by obeying me, he's doing good to himself. It's not tyranny, it's actually liberty. But as kids, I want them to obey. As heirs, we're meant to rejoice. He says, if you know all of heaven and all the world is yours, you rejoice. I don't know if Jeff Bezos has kids, but I promise you, they're probably not worried about how they're gonna pay for college. And the Christian's not meant to be a warrior. All of heaven and earth are ours. We can rejoice, right? And as a family, we love. And we'll do that one next week. But we need to move to another implication. We are God's children. We are God's people. We belong to the Lord. That's the comforting beauty he's trying to get across to us. But now he presents a second reality that's also hard for a lot of people to accept, but for different reasons. He says, we are God's people, so we're not like other people. We belong to the Lord, and that makes us different from the world. And you see it in verse 11. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. At the beginning, in verse 1, he called them the elect exiles, chosen by God and weird to everyone else. That's the reality. Holy and loved, stranger and exile. There's something weird about you as you enter back into the culture. You're different. And that difference, you'll feel the tension. And the tension is in the title. You are a sojourner or an alien. In Greek, it's the word para-oikios. Oikios means house. Para means alongside. It means there's a community in the house and you're near them, but you're not in them. So you live by them, but you're not part of them. And the other word carries the idea of you're in this culture, but you're passing through it. And so to those two words together of sojourner and exile, or some translate them alien and strangers, they work together to say, I live here, but I'm not from here. And I'm not here long. It's how many people conceive of their time in DC. I live here, but I'm not from here, and I'm not here long. Right? But a great illustration would be of a diplomat or an ambassador. I belong to another country. And I have a home in this one, but it's not a permanent home. I'm here, but I'm not part of here. But I'm here. I'm rooted, but the roots are shallow. And I'm here for a while, but not forever. And then the question is, how do you act if you know you're a stranger, right? How do the beloved also be pilgrims? That's the idea. And what he tells you is, the first thing is, we act different. Because we are different, we act different, right? And so he gives you that in verse 11. We, as sojourners and exiles, abstain from the passions of the flesh. I love the way John Piper said it. He said, the Christian is at home in every culture and at odds with every culture. Because the gospel is at home in every culture and at odds with every culture. The message of Christianity is not change your life, adapt your lifestyle, visit some holy city. You don't make any changes. Where you are, dressed how you are, acting like you are, no matter where you are, the message comes that God came for you. He sent his son for you. That son lived a perfect life for you. That son died for you. That son resurrected for you. That son offers life to you. You are adopted not based on your work, but his. You are renovated from the inside before you've done a thing. So the gospel comes to any culture, any political culture, skater culture, rap culture, hip hop culture, country culture. It comes to any culture, any ethnicity. It's at home in any country. The gospel can move in. And yet the gospel's at odds with every culture. Not all of it. That's why Christian worship can take a myriad of different flavors and use all kinds of instruments. But every culture, because they're fallen, will be challenged in different ways by the gospel. That's why some of you may be from a more liberal political persuasion, and at times, if you've been tracking with us, I'll say things that you'll go, yeah, right. And then I'll say other things that you go, why did you say that? Because parts of your culture will agree, and parts the gospel will challenge. And if you're from a conservative political culture, I'll say things that you'll go, yeah, and then I'll say other things that you'll go, why did you say that? Because the gospel's at home in any culture and also challenges every culture. That's the beauty of it. And so he says, go home, back into your culture. But once the gospel's landed in you, you have changed citizenship. Your citizenship is now, you're a beloved, chosen child of God. Now go back into the culture, but know you're going back different. And you'll walk back into it and some things will be different. And there's some things you used to do, you don't do anymore. You abstain, which means stop it. You don't do certain things. Why? Because they're passions of the flesh. There's a part of you that'll still want them, but you know now they waged war against your soul. It's a deeply personal reason why we don't do what some of our other friends do. It's because we knew what we thought was freedom was actually slavery. Actually, this passage wages war on the modern thought that freedom is following your desires. Just follow your passions. And we know that doesn't work because our passions conflict. I have a passion to be in shape. I also have a passion to eat about a pound of cookies every day. I do. I love them. And those passions conflict. That if I'm free to eat all I want, what will happen? Well, I won't be able to run as far, lift as much, or live as long. That freedom will actually become restriction. And so when I restrict myself now, it's for the freedom of, Lord willing, meeting my grandkids, right? And so freedom is not the ability to do whatever we want. Honestly, the Bible calls that tyranny. Johnny Cash had a bunch of fame, had a bunch of money. He said, I can do whatever I want. So he started doing a bunch of drugs and drinking a ton. And then he said, man, yeah, I thought I was drinking that bottle. And then you realize, no, that bottle's drinking you. I thought I was free to do all that. And I realized what I thought was freedom actually put me in bondage. I talked to a young man who was in recovery for sexual addiction. And he said, I thought I was free to explore all these varieties of ways of acting out sexually. He said, and then I got addicted to them. And he said, now that he is abstaining from so much of what was part of his life, he said, I feel like I'm getting healthy relationships back. I'm getting love and intimacy back. And he said, and here's the crazy thing. I'm getting my creativity back. I didn't realize how much that freedom had stolen from me. And so what we call freedom is actually often tyranny. And so the Bible says we abstain from certain things. Why? Because they were warring against us. They were hurting us. So we stopped doing some things. I remember years ago, Dawn and I watched that show, The Biggest Loser. And this kid had pulled away from a society and lost a lot of weight and was learning about how he had really put his body in jeopardy. And when he came home, he had a completely different body, had lost so much weight and a really different mentality about how to live. And as he got home, his girlfriend wanted to celebrate his changes by making him a huge sheet cake, a bowl of ice cream, and a bunch of chicken wings. And you saw him look at it like, that almost killed me. That will kill me. I can't do that anymore. And she was offended and it hurt her feelings. She's like, how dare you? And Dawn and I were like, get away from her. She's no good for you. Because you're like, hey, this girl wants you to indulge in some things that kill you. But you see the tension there. She thought it was good. He knows this will kill me. And now you see the tension. And as the Christian, we'll go, man, God's changed my heart. There's some things I used to do I can't do anymore. I still love my friends, but I can't do everything they did. And when you walk back into that, they won't understand. So we are different and will be treated different. He says it, so they will speak against you as evil doers. That's what he said in the next passage. There will be people that won't understand. Your abstinence will be odd. And some of you have encountered that. You say, hey man, I can't party like that anymore. And people are like, why not, dude? What's the matter with you? Oh, you're religious now? You think you're better than us? Is that what this is? And they ascribe motive that's insulting to them. Or some of you, maybe you've been a part of a work culture that they do some things and you say, I can't do that. And they go, that guy's antisocial. That guy's not cool. That girl doesn't like to hang with us. She must not like her. She thinks she's better than us. And they begin to dislike you and even call you an evil doer. That's what happened in Peter's day. The Christians wouldn't participate in certain parts of the culture in the day. Gladiatorial games, some of the big love feasts, they wouldn't be a part of. And they were branded as antisocial and then branded as a danger to society. You aren't just odd, you're dangerous. And so Peter says here in his day, and it's often true in many countries in our day, people look at the believer and say, you're an evildoer, you're dangerous. We don't want you here. So we are God's people, which makes us not like other people. We belong to the Lord. That makes us different from the world, and there'll be tension. So what do we do? How do we live? Now we're approaching our key text, right? What Peter's not gonna say is what you do is launch a social media campaign and you come at them and you let them know and you light them up, you blow them up, you slam them, you own them. He doesn't say that. He's not in attack mode. He says, we are not just different from them. This is your last point. We're not just different from them, we're different for them. So he tells you to stop doing something. Abstain from sinful desires. But then verse 12 is the same sentence, actually in Greek, keeps running. He says, but keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. Notice there's no violence in the text. He doesn't say you attack them, you come after them, they disagree with you, you own them. He doesn't say that. What does he say? I abstain from some things, and that will make me odd. But I engage in some things, and that will make us attractive. I decide to keep my conduct honorable among the Gentiles, the word ethnos, the different nations. If we're part of God's holy nation now and we enter into different nations, as we're mixing in with people with different values, different ideas, I want to treat them in a way that has honor. Why do I do that? So when they speak of me as an evildoer, if people don't understand me, if they mistreat me, if they think what I'm advocating for is really something that's not, and we disagree, and I'm characterized or mischaracterized, he says, no, we're going to keep being honorable. Why? So they may see our good deeds. So that's an active word. I'm doing good in the world. I'm not shrinking back from it. I'm not moving out into the woods with my kid and teaching her bow and arrows and ninja skills, although you can do that maybe in your recreational time. I'm moving into the culture, and I'm doing things that are good, that the culture will perceive as good. That they see, man, what these people are doing, but that was a good thing. And then he tells you the result of doing that. I'm gonna do good deeds. Why? So that they may glorify God on the day of his visitation. I'm different from them, but I'm not just different from them. I'm different for them. So I'll be odd, but I want to be odd and attractive. I want to use my oddity for their benefit, not just retreat from society and be different from them. I want to step into it and be different for them. Why? So they can know the God who loves me, because he loves them and I love him, so I love them. And so I want to treat them in a way that makes them see how glorious my God is. So on the day he visits, they'll celebrate, they'll know him, they'll want him because they saw his beauty reflected in me. We're meant to be like Superman, stranger from another planet. My kids and I have been reading the Superman origin story. We're reading a lot of books. I mentioned that earlier. What happens? You're not from here, but you're here now. And you're different. And in the origin story we read, he was using that difference to excel at football, crushing other high school kids. Really not right. And his dad tells him, man, you're not just supposed to be different for your benefit. You're different for them. Your greatest freedom is being a servant to those people who need you. And it's the same with us. We're different from them by the grace of God. And so we're different for them. So they'll know that grace too, so that they may see my good deeds and glorify God on the day of his visitation. And Peter's just getting this from Jesus, by the way. Jesus said it in Luke 6. He says, love your enemies. Does that sound anything like what you've encountered on social media this week? Enemy, what should I do? Oh yeah, love. Love your enemy. And then Jesus says, do good, same word. Actively express that love in doing things that benefit them. And then he gives you an example. Lend expecting nothing in return. He says, consider lending them money. Why? Your reward will be great. You'll be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. God was gracious to us when we were rebels, so we're gracious to them, so they can know the God that loves rebels and changes us into something new. That's what we do. Our abstinence will repel us, but our actions will attract them. And that's what we do. We're not just different from them, we're different for them. So verse 16, we live as free people. We're not obligated, but we don't use our freedom as an excuse to do evil. We become a servant of God because we know that true freedom is just changing masters, because everybody's gonna serve somebody. We serve one who loves us and gave his life for us. And how do we serve him? This is where we were getting to. Verse 17, we honor everyone. What's the good we do? We honor them. Everyone in Greek is the word all. It means everyone. Every person you can think of. If they're a person, you honor them. And the word honor comes from the word to ascribe worth or value. I treat every person like they're valuable. Why? Because they are. Because my scriptures tell me in Genesis that we all come from the same parents and that God made all of us in the image of God. It's not based on capacity that you have dignity. Your dignity comes because the Maker laid his hands on you. We have the image of God on us, not based on what we do, but because of whose we are. He made everybody. And so everybody has dignity. Genesis 1 says that we are all made in the image of God, and the Bible doesn't really explain what it means to be made in the image of God, but you get two explanations. One later in Genesis, it says, if someone's in the image of God, you don't murder them. And then in James, he says, if someone's in the image of God, you don't slander them. So whatever it means to be in the image of God, it means that I don't hurt you bodily and I don't hurt you with my mouth, that I treat you with honor. Why? Because God loves you, so I love you. So I do things that communicate honor to you, that you will recognize as good. So I do things to you that you would understand as good. I remember I was speaking at a college campus. They asked me to come speak to a leadership seminar about leadership, but I came as someone who was leading a Christian organization. And I remember a young man during the Q&A just said to me, I'm uncomfortable with you being here because you're a religious leader. And quite frankly, I don't know why they invited you here in a secular school. And he said, I'm from, and he named a different country in the Middle East. He said, so I'm just real curious for you as a Christian, what do you think of me? And I loved that question. I said, you want to know what I think of you? I said, my Bible says you are made in the image of my God, who I love. So you have value and you have dignity. You have dignity if you disagree with me. You have value if you hate me. And so he told me, I love my enemies. I do good to those who hurt me. I pray for those who persecute me. This is the words of my Jesus. So how do I treat you? I honor you and I love you. That doesn't mean I always agree with you. We may profoundly disagree, and Peter says that later. But you got to be ready to give an explanation for the hope that you have, but you do it with gentleness and respect. I may disagree with you, but I can disagree with you and still honor you. Francis Schaeffer was so good at that. He was basically the C.S. Lewis to the hippies. Francis Schaeffer used to say, I don't want to debate people. He was always asked on university campuses to debate some atheist or something. He said, I won't debate them. I'll have a conversation with them though. And he said, I want to get on stage. And he said, my idea is I want to strongly object to their ideas, but so honor them in the process that it would not feel at all odd for me to invite them to dinner afterwards. And he always would, and they would often say yes. That I can disagree with you and still honor you. And for all of us as believers, we have to find a way to do that. How do I find a way as I enter my office where they're gonna see me as weird? Enter the culture, enter into the contentious political world that we live in, and communicate honor to people in the name of Jesus so that they'll know him. We gotta figure out how to do that. That's our great challenge and call as believers. Right? I had a friend that right out of college, he went to work for a company and he wanted people to know Jesus because Jesus had changed his life. And so he was telling people about Jesus. And if you've ever had that guy at work, often it doesn't go great. Hey, you want to come to church with me? No, bro, get away from me. What are you, weird? Like it went nowhere. And finally he realized when I say the word church, I got a definition behind me of love and acceptance and beauty and God renovating hearts. When they hear the word church, there's a lot of other words associated with it that are not the words I'm talking about. So we're not communicating in a way that says what I'm trying to say. But he worked in a company that had work teams that would be assigned different projects. And if you project dropped on you, man, you could be working all day, all night, through the night. And he said there was one day he was packing up, my project's done, I'm going home. And he saw another team and he knew they were in for a long night, probably a long week, no sleep, living off coffee. It's gonna be rough. And so he said he just walked over to them and said, all right, I went ahead and ordered y'all coffee. Give me your dinner orders. I'm gonna take your orders. I'm gonna pick it up and I'll bring it back. And they're like, what are you doing? He was like, yeah, I'm taking your dinner order. Give it to me. And they're like, why are you doing that? Because you're probably gonna be hungry. Give it to me. And he said it confused them. Why? Are you attracted to one of us? Are you trying to win over us sort of psychologically? Is this some kind of jujitsu? What are you doing? But over a while they realized, no, you're just a cool guy and you care about other people. You're not just incessantly trying to climb the ladder. Maybe business success isn't the most important thing to you. Hey, you're not just chasing the almighty dollar. Maybe money's not the most important thing to you. Hey, you're not just kissing up to the people who will help you advance in your career. You're also being kind to the people who won't help you advance. Maybe your career is not where you find your sense of identity. What's going on with you? And it was alluring and attractive. Honoring led them to draw near. We do good to them if perhaps they might glorify God on the day of his visitation. If your God's like that, I want to know a God like that. Watchman Nee used to tell the story of being in China, and a man was irrigating his rice fields, and he found he would go out there and all the water would be drained out. You got to keep them really wet. And he realized his neighbor would come and cut a hole in their fence so the water would drain down to fill his rice field. The guy was stealing all my labor and work. What do you do as a normal human in that? You go to the guy's house and you just have a conversation with him, right? Let him know. Take a man's water. As a Christian, what do? He said, what I did is I just started pumping enough water to fill both of our fields. And when the guy saw that obviously he understood I was stealing from him, and rather than attack me, he served me, that makes no sense. I don't understand you, but I want to understand you. And the man came to know Christ because he saw Christ in that man. Polycarp was the bishop of Smyrna. In a day when Christians were persecuted, Christians were being dragged at that point into a coliseum and murdered for sport in front of people. Wild animals are lit on fire. His parishioners kept trying to hide Polycarp because he was the bishop. We don't want to lose you as a leader. And finally he said, guys, I can't run anymore. They're going to find me. And so soldiers came to the door to arrest him. The crowd was already in the Colosseum. It's time to kill you, Polycarp. And when they arrived at the door, he greeted them and he said, I know it was a long journey to get here. Can I get you something to eat? And he fixed them refreshments. And while the men who were there to arrest him and kill them ate the food he prepared for them, he prayed for them for an hour. And the record says then they felt really bad about killing him. They realized, this is the best kind of guy we got. Why are we coming after this guy? We should all be like this guy, not persecuting this guy. What's this guy like? And I'll tell you what he's like. He's like God. Because while we were sinners, Christ died for us. This is love. Not that we love God, but he loved us. And he sent Christ to be a sacrifice for our sin. Behold, what manner of love the Father has given to us that we'd be called children of God. Why would we be called that? But such we are. It's because we who knew no mercy were shown mercy. We who knew no grace were shown grace. While we were a long way off, God came running. And when we could not fix us, the great physician came to heal us. When we could not live a perfect life, Jesus did it for us. When we could not pay the debt of our sin, he paid it. And when we were powerless in the face of death, he broke the back of its power. And when he rose from the grave, he said, you're coming with me. And whoever believes in me, you don't have to do a thing. I'm changing you on the inside. And you once weren't a people, but now you're God's people. You belong to no one. Now you belong to me. And that'll make you mine. And it'll make you weird. You'll be different. But different doesn't mean offensive, doesn't mean offended. Those who know grace, we show grace. And we're not just different from the world, we're different for the world. We come with a resource of love that overflows the banks of our hearts so that when they see our good deeds, they say, surely there is a great God behind a man like that, behind a woman like that. And the gospel get adorned by the love of the saints.